All right, all right. Well, good morning, dear ones. Good morning, Adrienne.
Good morning, SOTU.
How a stuck throat in your frog?
Yes.
So, how are you today?
Yeah, good. Survived the new year.
All right. Did you have a nice birthday yesterday? You
I
New
did.
Year's, you New Year's baby?
Interesting birthday.
Well, they often are they not?
Are they
Being
not?
on the first of the year and all of those dynamics that are occurring in your world right now. All right, all right. So, this is Happy New Year, everyone. This is our first broadcast, let us say, of 2017. This is SOTUesday for the third day of January 2017. And energies are still as chaotic as they were. The feared dynamic that would be equal energy of 9/11 has not manifested and is less likely to manifest today than it was last week at this time. And we can go into a more in-depth explanation of that dynamic if you would wish when we get there. But please understand that there are energies at play that are going to manifest dynamics that are unexpected for most of you. And we do say most of you because most of you are living in a delusion. You are living in a dynamic of either or, of black or white, of very adolescent situations and reactions to your world. And so instead of dealing with the dynamics with a certain measure of critical thinking and critical understanding, what tends to happen is you give your power over to others that you consider authorities in this sort of way. And we can be included in that dynamic, certainly so. So, the ultimate dynamic, the ultimate, what shall we say, purpose of this time here is to literally to question everything, because you're going to find, all of you, no matter what position you hold to be true, you're going to find out that the other end of the paradoxes are equally as true in their own ways, and that the truth can only be found in the understanding of the full dynamic of a paradox rather than just one end of it or the other. All right, so we've blown 3 minutes in a very short explanation of the dynamics, and because we have Adrienne now with us, and we'll continue to have her with us for at least a little while, we will consider these sessions to be a little more interactive rather than us just speaking for 15 or 20 minutes. So, Adrienne, is there anything that you would like us to cover today?
There are two things.
Two things.
One, I have a bone to pick with you because I certainly got to look over this in the last few days.
A wishbone?
Maybe. That there was a certain relief that we had no big event, especially a lot of predictions. There were a lot of predictions out there about something.
And still are.
Something negative and large happening.
Yes, and still are.
And but
let us not delude you to think that energy has shifted. It has not. It has only been abated somewhat. Go ahead.
Well, we've experienced this dynamic before, and I think I'm only beginning to fully understand it, is that you will present something as a good possibility as you're reading the energy, and then I respond and react to that, as do others who are listening to you.
And the point is that it's not just you.
No, of course not. And then if it doesn't happen, there's a little bit of, Was SOTU, can I trust SOTU?
Well, you must understand the dynamics of reality creation, certainly so, in these sorts of situations. And this is a perfect example of it. For the past 3 months or so, we have been working with you and building you up and giving you alternatives to, what shall we say, this buildup of tension, this buildup of the dynamic of chaotic energy that has been occurring that could easily have manifested in a much more severe way than what happened in Istanbul. For Istanbul was a very small, what shall we say, reflection of the dynamics that were going to happen. It just, for those that we would suggest to you that lived in Istanbul or lived in that place where that terrorist attack occurred, that they consider it an event as severe as the dynamic of 9/11. However, this is a prime example of how you can affect your reality. How, through the dynamics of suggestion, through the dynamics of understanding, through the dynamics of, what shall we say, a sort of in-depth understanding of how the energy works, you have to realize that as soon as you predict a future in that dynamic, it will change. If we can bring people to a point of considering the dynamics of fear, considering the dynamics that are building in a certain way, and they confront those fears within themselves, or we give them a technique that allows them to face those dynamics of fear within themselves. In other words, instead of just it being a nameless dynamic of fear, what you wind up doing is to name it, to see it, to say, what would I do in case of? And also to have the emotional connection of wishing to not have it happen that way. Because none of you wishes gloom and doom. None of you wishes disaster. So we, as well as others who know about this type of energy, have been putting it out over the internet for the past 3 or 4 months. And so we would suggest to you how much, we would ask you in that dynamic, how much could the possibility of that have actually changed the dynamic? Now, some of you out there will poo-poo that whole dynamic and say, oh, well, that's just an explanation for the energy not happening. But we would suggest to you that the energy did happen. It just did not happen with the slam bang of 9/11.
Yes. And
does that answer your question?
Well, it certainly points out that in a very simplistic way, I might take this as to whether or not I can trust SOTU. I trust you because I've worked with you for 25 years.
Well, but it's not about, we're not asking you to trust us.
I know, you don't need that. But for me, as someone interacting with you, it shows me the deeper levels of complexity and purpose to your work with us.
Well, but you must understand that the information that we give over these videos is very basic in its dynamic, because what shall we say, the actual dynamic of movement is as complex as each and every one of you. And so you have to understand that. Now, we are certainly prepared to work with you on all of those different levels, but the dynamic, we cannot just put out the information in this sort of way and expect or hope that those that are really interested are going to become deeply involved in the dynamic of this work. For this work does require a certain courage, a certain dynamic of the willingness to look at the dynamics of one's own limitations of beliefs, that one begins to look at the dynamics of one's own emotional, what shall we say, blockages and emotional tape loops that one plays out in one's life. When you realize that, as you begin to disconnect those dynamics, and as you begin to realize that you are enough, and you realize that there is enough, you begin to look at the reflections of the injustices in your world, and you begin to see them in such a way as from the aspect of a peacemaker, of a problem solver. And so you must understand that from the whole dynamic of the work, the whole dynamic of the dynamics that we have done with you and have worked with you, have worked toward a dynamic of an end where you each, where enough of you step into the dynamic of understanding and step into the dynamic of personal empowerment and taking responsibility for the creation of your reality, you begin to see and you begin to realize that that will reflect outwardly in your own world in many, many ways, So you had a second question for us.
Well, not question, but since you had mentioned paradox, it might be a time to just... Because
again, paradox is a dynamic that is complex, and we could do a workshop in and of itself on paradox. But suffice it to say that as a result of the dynamics of the dualistic reality that you live in, as a result of the fact that, what shall we say, certain powers, certain people have used the dynamics of separation, the dynamics of power over, to be able to each get you each all into a, what shall we say, a tribal dynamic where, now it's the Republicans and the Democrats and the rights and the lefts. But in fact, if you look at the dynamic, it's all confused. It's all messed up in so many ways, because the world is topsy-turvy right now, because each and every one of you is being asked in your own way, examine your beliefs. Where are your beliefs limiting you?
Well, and that's all of us.
Well, of course.
All of us, because...
Of course. That's what we are doing. We're trying to speak to all of you. We're trying to say to you, this is not SOTU's information that is proprietary and all of that. This is a dynamic. If you begin to understand it, begin to share it with others. Begin to understand that by moving more and more into taking responsibility for the creation of your personal reality, you begin to shift and change everything. You can see that the dynamic of collective desire can change everything. Now, you are moving into a place of, that some call ascension. You are moving into a place of, certainly so, of expanded consciousness and expanded awareness. And as we move with you through this year, we wish to give you more and more tools in dealing with those dynamics. We will be presenting in a different format starting in February for the Conversations with SOTU format, which is up to a 3-hour session that basically answers all of your up-to-date and perhaps even metaphysical questions. We will also be presenting at least one full-day workshop, a full weekend workshop, over the next year. That is going to be basically the Peace Genesis Project. Now you must understand, you don't must understand, but it would serve you to understand that the Peace Genesis Project is a result of the 25 years of work that we have all done together.
And it has its pragmatic side in terms of the idea of what it's going to take physically for humanity to come to peace. But it has its very personal side, because it's only in these places where we have limiting beliefs and emotional blockages in our personal lives that keeps us
Well, someone once told you that.
Yes, I know, you did. But I'm putting it in my words.
No, please
because
continue.
This is how I understand it.
Repeat it, please.
The Peace Genesis Project came out of work that we did metaphysically around healing and changing beliefs.
Right. They came out specifically. It came out of, what would you say, 50 groups and at least 50 dynamics of intensive workshops some of which had 9 parts, some of which had 8 parts, some of which had 6 parts, where we would do them over a period of 1 or 2 full weekends, where literally hundreds of people participated in those dynamics, which helped to lay out the dynamics of the templates of healing and forgiveness necessary to have synthesized, what shall we say, 3 or more years worth of intensive work into an encapsulated dynamic that can be presented over a weekend. That basically has to do with the dynamic of healing and forgiveness. But in order, as we say, there are ways to begin to understand things. And so in the dynamics of the healing and forgiveness workshop, there is a certain identification of the, what shall we say, the personal aspects of hurt that one holds within oneself. And we're going to let you have that moment. And so we were able to, through the dynamics of working with all of these groups of people, ascertain a certain dynamic. And what was that dynamic, Adrienne?
Well, these places where we hold these emotional blockages, hurts, are very personal to our individual life and experience.
And who you individually see yourself as being.
And when we're able to change these, heal these, remove the blockages, it allows us to honestly, authentically be able to say, yes, peace with enough for all. These things.
Peace begins with enough for all. Now, here's the key. There are 5 basic dynamics within that subheading, all right? Needs around food. Needs around food, water, shelter, healthcare, and education. All right. Reverse image. So understand that many of you will begin to think of that dynamic. Well, peace begins with enough for all. Food. Yeah, but. Water. Yeah, but. Shelter. Yeah, but. Healthcare. Yeah, but. Education. Yeah, but. That's the famous yeah, buts that we speak of. Go ahead, Adrienne.
And each of those yeah, buts, because there are probably some that are stronger for you than there are for others.
Well, not you're going to have all 5.
But
we would suggest to you that you're going to have 1 or 2 that your objections or your beliefs in it not being able to happen are more, what shall we say, embedded than some of the others. In other words, you may not have that level of belief around all 5.
But it's those places where we want to argue for our limitations.
Correct.
That we actually have an emotional reason that's very personal, very unique, and only we can change. And when we change it, we make it more possible for all of humanity.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Absolutely so.
So, where you want to go with us this year?
Well, it's again, it is in a very, what we are doing is we're working with you in a very organic sort of way. And so we would not necessarily wish to deprive you of the adventure of discovery. All right, dear ones, we're already 17 minutes plus into this. We love you all so very, very much. Adrienne.
One more thing. When we do these intensives, we have come out and people's lives are invariably changed.
Well, so you say.
I do.
All right, all right, all right.
My life has changed.
All right, dear ones. Please like us. Please subscribe if you have not already. Please share us with those that you feel that may be interested in this sort of information and this sort of work. We love you all so very, very much. And so until the next time, both Adrienne and ourselves say goodbye. We love you all. And so we close, sending you peace, sending you happiness, sending you joy.